I've said it before, I think KDE is on a generational run. After the mess that was KDE 4, now I know someone's going to say, oh no, KDE 4 wasn't that bad. No. KDE 4 got better. If you look at the original reviews for KDE 4, that was a dev version. They numbered at KDE 4. It was not ready, and they realized it was not ready, and that's why things improved massively from there. They rebuilt their reputation through KDE 4, through Plasma 5, and now in Plasma 6, this is really showing. This is growing massively. We are getting to a point where people that have free will actively go and choose to use Plasma. On Arch, it is the most popular desktop environment. This isn't including window managers, just desktop environments. And with Plasma 6.7 coming in about 2 or so months, I am seriously considering swapping back to it, at least temporarily. Whether or not I'm going to come back to Neri, that still remains to be seen. But there is a bunch of cool stuff going on, and I thought, hey, let's talk about some of those changes. Now, this isn't going to be in any particular order, and they are things that I personally think are neat. Not even things I think are necessarily things I'm going to use, just generally interesting things happening. Let's start with one that I actually am going to be using. I've talked about this in a separate video, the return of Oxygen and Air. If you don't know, Oxygen was the dark theme, Air was the light theme. These were the themes of KDE 4. Now, Breeze isn't going anywhere, okay? Breeze is still the thing. Ocean is being worked on. We'll see where that goes. But Philip Feeler, along with Nuno Pinheiro, who was the original designer of Oxygen, have been working on a revival of the theme, along with some other people, and it's coming along really, really well. Is it perfect? No, absolutely not. But it is a look that we have not seen a desktop have in a real long time. No, it is not exactly like Oxygen on KDE 4 because layouts have changed and things like that, but it's as close as you're going to get, and having the original designer, you can ask, what would a Plasma 6 Oxygen actually look like? And that's how we get to where we are. Another feature that's not going to matter for most people, but for me, who sees this interface very often, it's a nice little change. Just a slightly nicer looking screen picker when I'm selecting the display I want to select in, OBS or various other things I might share my screen with. Now it takes the wallpaper of that desktop and puts it in the background. Is it a major change? No, definitely not. It's just a very subtle thing. It's that tiny bit of polish, which isn't a complete redesign of everything KDE was doing, but it just looks good. A very minor feature, but a nice feature nonetheless. Add GUI option in Plasma PA for loopback listen microphone. Now that probably doesn't make much sense, just seeing it written out, so let me show you. Inside of the Plasma sound module, you can then go and record your voice, and then play it back and hear what it sounds like. So if you want to go and test your mic levels, things like that, a way built into Plasma. Now, there's obviously most of the applications you're going to be using having some way to test it in the app, like a Discord and Jitsi and OBS and all that good stuff, but having a way to globally test it is just nice and convenient. Also, it's a great thing for troubleshooting, because if, say, you're opening Discord and it doesn't hear your mic, okay, well, I can test it in Plasma, and if Pipewire is detecting it, that means that obviously that mic is working. So then there's probably an issue with Discord, you can restart Discord. Now, if Plasma's not detecting it, now maybe there's an issue with the mic, maybe it's a faulty cable or a crashing driver or something else like that, and it gives you a better idea of where the problem might be. I don't tend to use the Plasma start menu, is that what it's called? I don't know what it's called, little menu in the corner. I'm going to call it the start menu because that's what Windows calls it. That's what they called it at some point, maybe they don't anymore. One thing being added to that is a recent locations item, so recent folders you visited. this honestly gives me more of a reason to actually open that menu, right? The way that I open apps, and look, I have my setup, and I like my setup. I take Toffee everywhere I go. I don't use Crunner. I don't use the menu. I don't use any of that. I have my system. But this is useful to me. Also, there's been some various changes made to the favorite section, like when you add a new favorite, it then highlights the favorites button so you know that the application can be found there. Also, you can drag and drop items into the favorite and drag them out, so you don't have to go and go through the context menu and do all that sort of stuff, just making it slightly more convenient. Now, let's go to one I made a very big deal about. Virtual desktops actually working. Not having it be where I change my virtual desktop on monitor 1 and monitor 2 and monitor 3 all change together. That's still there if you want to use it, if you like the option. KDE likes to give you options, and they like to give you buttons for those options as well. But having it work like it does on Niri, on Hyperland, on Sway, on basically every window manager, where I change the workspace on monitor 1, it only changes on monitor 1 and nowhere else. This was a feature request from 21 years ago. This has been a problem for as long as some of you have been alive, maybe even longer. Maybe far less, depending on how old you are. Again, I've seen my statistics. But this has been a problem for the majority of the life of KDE, and finally, as of 6.7, is no longer a problem. And honestly, was kind of my biggest blocker for KDE. I just found it annoying not having workspaces, not having virtual desktops work the way they work on every single window manager I've used. Now they do. It's a lot more compelling. Again, if you like the way they currently work, you don't have to enable the new feature. Keep doing what you're doing. Relevant to this are 2 additional bindings for the exact same feature, page up and page down through the virtual desktop selector, also scrolling through it. A lot of the time, I will go and do things with keyboard shortcuts. However, if my hand is on the mouse, I will use the mouse, right? I'm not opposed to using the mouse. If the mouse is more convenient, the mouse will be used, and being able to scroll through the workspace selector, honestly, I do it sometimes. Maybe not something all of you use, but do you have any family, friends, business relations across different time zones, and do you include multiple time zones in your clock? Maybe. It's a thing a lot of people do. Well, now you don't have to work out what the time difference between those time zones are. It's just going to tell you. Is it a major change? No, absolutely not. But it is nice to just see the time delta. I'm actually working on another video right now. I wasn't sure if it was going to make the cut, but it seems like it has hit the deadline. Another really cool feature, provide sharper text/icon scaling. This is for people that are using extreme levels of scaling to the point where this is all you are seeing on your screen. This is now adding in a filter that extremely sharpens the text, which for a lot of people that are zooming in that much, really increases the legibility of the text. Now, it's not something you have to use, but if you are doing this, it does completely change how usable the system actually is. For context, this is on a 4K screen. I want to say it's like a 40-inch screen as well. And this is the level of zoom the developer normally operates. Basically just eliminates the fact that when you're at this level of zoom, everything naturally just gets blurry. And if you have struggle seeing in the first place, and that's why you've zoomed in that much, you don't want it to be blurry. And maybe something that matters to some of you, much better support for e-waste, trash, really slow GPUs. So there was a bug in KWin. It's been there for about 5 years now. Maybe some of you have experienced this. So if you run multiple GPUs, and let's say one of those GPUs doesn't support the GPU acceleration that KWin needs to GPU accelerate, but the other one does. for some reason, it was assuming that none of the cards in the system could GPU accelerate, and the environment would not be GPU accelerated, even if the other card could do so. Now, if you have a card that can GPU accelerate and a card that can't, it will use the correct card. This is a very niche problem. Most people are not running ancient GPUs that don't work with OpenGL. But if you are, congratulations, your environment now works considerably better. Let's talk about the emoji selector. So over the years, Emoji have added a lot of skin tone variations for pretty much every emoji that could have a skin tone variation. Now, when there's a single person in the emoji, it adds, a couple of them. It's fine. When there's multiple, this can lead up to like 30 new emoji being added. This makes the emoji selector really annoying to use and just a mess. So what they have done is grouped related emoji into a pop-up. So you have the main emoji at the top, you have whatever skin tone you've selected, and then all of the variations are in a pop-up menu. So far less bloat, you can actually use the selector. A massive change for me. Maybe doesn't matter for any of you. Do you use something like OBS or anything else out there that has a lot of those annoying pop-ups for selecting your window selection? So you want to capture your desktop and this window and that window and that window and that window. I have a lot of these, especially for things like my podcast or my game streams, things like that. Now they are adding the option because apparently this dev had over 100 screencasts, which made opening OBS a nightmare, to just close all of them. Because some of them you don't need right now, some of them you can set when you set them, and trying to set them with the prompt without knowing what that prompt is linked to, just a nightmare. Now, this is basically a band-aid solution for the problem of having a ton of windows being opened every time you open up OBS, but it's a band-aid I very much appreciate for now. My hope is long-term we can come up with a much better way to handle screen capture on Wayland that doesn't involve 30 different window prompts. That would be lovely. I don't know, something like pre-approving an application to let it just capture what it wants. I don't know. There has to be something that is less annoying than what we're doing. Oh, but permissions. Oh, you gotta make sure it has the permission. Sure, fine. There's gotta be a better way than this. Here's a question. In KDE, did you know they supported alternate calendars? I didn't. Maybe you use them? I don't know. Well, they're adding a new one that is for the Vietnamese lunar calendar. Is this something I am ever going to use? No. No, I'm not. But if you're Vietnamese, or for some other reason you might want the Vietnamese lunar calendar, here you go. Something that'll affect far more people is improvements to fractional scaling. There have been issues with rendering of the resizing of windows. Maybe it's not a big deal. Hey, probably not. But now it is going to work as it should and be much smoother. It's a tiny rendering artifact, probably doesn't affect most people. You're probably not even going to notice it was fixed, but it's just another tiny bit of polish that just makes things slightly better. On the topic of Wayland protocols, support for real session save and restore for window content and state on Wayland. The Wayland Session Restoration Protocol. I believe there's some other pieces that still have to go into this, because this is a very complicated problem. It requires support from basically every toolkit, and then applications that are not using toolkits, and it's a complicated mess, but we are very close to getting session restoration actually working on Wayland. Have you ever noticed that random windows that are a part of the Plasma environment, not like an application you open, but something that is like part of like the windowing system, part of like the stuff that's open to control it, will just randomly scroll at a really slow speed? If yes, That's now been fixed. So it seems like the issue was they were using the wrong delta, and this led to the speed being like 8 times slower than it should have been. So you just scroll a very tiny amount, which you probably got used to, but that doesn't happen anymore. And now it scrolls at the speed it should be. Much, much easier support built directly into Plasma for alternate keys. So diacritics, and if you want to do things like have fractions and different forms of dash. Obviously, tilde is on most standard keyboards, but there are other forms that might not be. The upside down exclamation mark, whatever that's used for, arrows, things like that. This is something that you can do with IMs and is a thing with virtual keyboards. It's something that's part of Plasma Keyboard. Plasma Keyboard is coming along really well. It is super cool, and honestly, I'm starting to see the appeal of this project. Now, is this going to be perfect? No. Is there a lot of work to do to make sure things function with non-Latin character sets, which are also going to want, long presses for things? Good luck. You've got a lot of work to do here, but it is coming along. Now I can actually spell resume correctly. Have you ever had an application freeze and you need to go and quit it? Well, now if you go and do so, there's a little spinner that shows you that something's actually happening, so you don't also think that the quit icon has frozen, which is not important, not a giant change, but again, just a bit of polish. Now, the next feature is not actually a new feature. It's a feature that already existed in Plasma, but didn't have a GUI setting for it. Add a GUI to control hidden delay time feature, or else remove it. So, with the Alt-Tab menu, with like that, window selector, there was a setting in the K1RC config to change the delay for when it appears. You'd go and manually modify this. It was annoying and stupid, and nobody wants to do that. So instead of doing it like that, they're now just adding a setting for it, which is how it should be, that's the way you handle settings. You add a toggle for it, you add a setting for it that you can see in the GUI. That's the point of the GUI. Frankly, I don't really know why you'd want a delay for it in the first place, but if there's going to be a setting already, I guess it makes sense to expose it. Personally, I would just say remove it and set the delay to be basically 0, but that's just me, and that's how I'm going to set it. This is a weird design choice which feels like a bug. Tablet, pen, and mouse do not sync cursor positions when using Wayland. So if you're like me and you use your mouse and you also have a drawing tablet here, which I use for editing my thumbnails, there was a weird problem in Plasma. The mouse position and the tablet position were two different things. Now, obviously, when you're using the tablet, and if you've used the tablet, you would know this, you map the position that you're on the tablet to the position on the screen. That's like how that works. So you'd expect it to teleport to where you tap on the tablet with the pen. That's just how it works. But if you do that and then use the mouse, the prior mouse position was remembered. So instead of moving from where you left off with the tablet, it would jump back to the old mouse position. This was intentional design in KDE. I don't know why. I don't know why you'd want that. They're now adding a toggle to not have that. Speaking of toggles, a dark mode toggle without having to go into your system settings, just having it as part of the thing that controls the screen brightness. Is this a super important thing? No, most people are probably sticking on light or dark, or you're automating it for the time of day, but it is nice to have an easier place to access this. Right now, it does not do a transition, but that will be added at some point in the future. And of course, the most important change ever, sound theme installation from file. Previously, there was no way to install sound themes other than manually extracting and moving theme folders into the share/sounds. With this feature, users can download sound themes using a button or dragging them onto the KCM, which handles the installation for them, similar to other KCMs. Having custom sounds within KDE is not new whatsoever, but this does make it quite a bit easier to actually do so. Now, for most people, you probably don't really go and even have sounds on your system. You want it to be as quiet as possible. But if you want to, you can also bring back the early days of KDE sounds where, like most systems of the time, it made a lot of noise. There are a bunch of other changes being made in Plasma 6.7, a bunch which I just didn't feel like covering here. If you want to find out what's going on week to week, the best place to do so is with This Week in Plasma. Go check it out, see what's going on, and hey, maybe you will find something that you didn't have any idea was being worked on. Give it a read. So, with all that being said, I am certainly excited. What are your favorite changes coming in Plasma 6.7? Do you even run Plasma? Or maybe you're going to give it a shot with this new version. Also, yes, I'm going to keep saying the funny number. Anyway, we don't get another funny number till Plasma 6.9, so we got to savor it while we get it. Anyway, if you liked the video, go like the video. If you really liked the video, and you want to become one of, sorry, I was tripping my outro there. If you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to Daily Brodie Pay, linked in the description down below. Make sure you go subscribe as well. And yeah, give Plasma a shot. They're doing cool things.
Something like this.